At exactly 1 a.m., my phone rang. The caller ID was blank, and the voice on the other end belonged to my daughter, who had been dead for 4 years. Before I go on, I have a quick request. If you're listening to this story on your phone, hit that like button and subscribe. Stick with me until the very end. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from. The phone rang at exactly 1 a.m. Not 12:59. Not 1:01. One sharp, metallic ring that sliced through the quiet of the house like a blade through fabric. I remember thinking, that clock hasn't been right in years. The old grandfather clock in the living room had stopped keeping perfect time after my wife died. Sometimes it lagged, sometimes it rushed ahead. I never bothered to fix it. It felt wrong to make it precise again, as if the house itself preferred to drift. But that night, when the pendulum swung and the single chime echoed through the hallway, the phone rang in perfect harmony with it. I was already awake. At 71, sleep doesn't come easily anymore. You don't fall into it, you negotiate with it. My body ached. My thoughts wandered. The rain outside tapped gently against the windows. A soft, persistent sound that reminded me the world was still moving, even when I felt stuck. The phone rang again. I lay there staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding harder with each second I waited. Nobody calls at 1. 0 inches the morning unless something is wrong, or unless they don't know the rules anymore. All right, I muttered, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. I'm coming. The floorboards creaked under my feet as I shuffled into the hallway. I didn't bother turning on the lights. I knew this house in the dark. I'd learned every shadow after 4 years of living alone. 4 years since my daughter died. 4 years since the silence became loud. The phone rang a third time, impatient now. I reached the small table beside the wall, where the landline sat untouched most days, its cord coiled like a sleeping snake. My fingers hovered over the receiver. Something told me not to answer. That instinct didn't scream. It whispered. And I ignored it the same way I had ignored so many quiet warnings before. "Hello," I said. At first, there was only static. A faint hiss, like distant wind. Then I heard breathing. Slow, careful, familiar. "Dad?" My grip tightened so hard my knuckles burned. "No," I said immediately. "No, that's not funny." There was a pause. Then the voice spoke again, softer this time. "Dad, please don't be mad. I'm cold." My knees buckled. I caught myself against the wall, the phone pressed to my ear as if I could anchor myself to reality through it. My daughter's name was Evelyn. She had been dead for 4 years. "You shouldn't call here," I whispered. "Whoever you are, this isn't kind." "I didn't know where else to go," the voice replied. "You always said the front door was home." I closed my eyes. That was something I used to say when she was a child, when she'd call me from college, crying about exams or broken hearts. No matter what, the front door is home. I had never told anyone else that. "You sound just like her," I said. "That's cruel." The breathing on the other end hitched. "Dad," the voice said, breaking. "I'm standing outside." The house felt suddenly smaller. The walls pressed in. The rain outside sounded louder, sharper. "Outside where?" I asked, even though I already knew. "On the porch," she said. "You forgot to leave the light on." I turned my head slowly toward the front door. The porch light was off. I hung up the phone. The silence afterward was worse than the call. It roared in my ears. My hands trembled as I lowered the receiver back into place. "You're exhausted," I told myself. "This is grief. It's your mind replaying memories." Then I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. 3 soft knocks. The same rhythm Evelyn used when she came home late as a teenager, afraid I'd already gone to bed. I swallowed hard. "Go away," I said aloud, my voice barely carrying. "Please." Another knock. "Dad," a voice whispered, not through the phone this time, but through the wood itself. "It's freezing out here." I approached the door like a man walking toward his own reflection in a shattered mirror. Every step felt unreal, disconnected from my body. I leaned forward and peered through the peephole. She stood there exactly as I remembered her. Same height, same dark hair pulled back too hastily, same gray jacket she used to steal from my closet because it smelled like home. Her face was pale, too pale. When she smiled, it didn't reach her eyes. "Open up." Her lips formed silently. I staggered back, my breath coming in ragged gasps. This couldn't be real. It wasn't real. I unlocked the door anyway. Just a crack. Just enough to let the cold night air rush in and sting my skin. There was no one there. The porch was empty. The rain fell softly onto bare wood. Leaves skittered across the yard. The street lamp flickered at the edge of the driveway. I slammed the door shut and threw the deadbolt twice. My chest burned. My heart pounded like it was trying to escape. I spent the rest of the night sitting upright on the couch, every light in the house turned on, the phone unplugged from the wall. Morning didn't bring relief. When I opened the front door at dawn, the porch was marked with wet footprints. Small ones. Bare feet. They led from the steps to the door, and nowhere else. That was the moment I stopped asking if something was wrong, and started asking why now. I didn't sleep that morning. I sat at the kitchen table long after the sun rose, my hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had long since gone cold. I kept staring at the back door, half expecting to hear footsteps again, half hoping I wouldn't. The footprints on the porch were already fading when the daylight fully settled in. By noon, they were gone entirely, like they'd never existed. But I had seen them. I knew what I saw. I showered, shaved, and changed clothes as if routine alone could anchor me. When grief gets loud, you cling to small rituals. They're proof you still exist. At 9:30, my neighbor Helen rang the bell. "You left your porch light on all night," she said gently. "Everything okay?" I lied. "Of course I did." "Oh, I must have forgotten," I replied. "Old age." She smiled politely, but her eyes lingered on my face. People can tell when you've been crying. They just pretend they can't. After she left, the house felt heavier. That was when I noticed the photo frame on the mantel was slightly crooked. It was the picture of Evelyn at 25, laughing. Her hair caught mid-motion, her eyes bright in a way that still hurt to look at. I was meticulous about that frame. I dusted it every Sunday. Someone had touched it. Behind it, taped to the wall, was a folded piece of paper. My heart dropped into my stomach. I knew that paper. I peeled it free with shaking fingers and unfolded it carefully, as if it might crumble into dust. It was Evelyn's handwriting. Not a note I remembered, but one I should have found years ago. "Dad, if you're reading this, it means I finally worked up the courage to hide it somewhere you'd notice. I don't know how to explain this without sounding paranoid, but something feels wrong. I love him, but I don't feel safe anymore. He says I'm imagining things. That stress makes people invent stories, but he knows things about me that I never told him. Things about you, about Mom. If anything happens to me, please don't let him decide the story. Please. E. I read it 3 times before my brain caught up with my eyes. Her husband, Daniel, a respected therapist, well-spoken, calm, gentle, the kind of man people trusted instinctively, the kind of man who had handled everything after her accident, the paperwork, the police interviews, the funeral arrangements. I had been grateful at the time, too numb to question anything. My phone buzzed on the table. A text message. Daniel, just checking in. You sounded off yesterday. Are you sleeping? The words felt invasive now, like fingers pressing into a bruise. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the drawer beneath the phone and pulled out the old folder I hadn't touched in years. The accident reports, the insurance forms, the newspaper clipping with the headline I still couldn't read without my throat tightening. Local woman killed in single car accident. Single car, wet road, mechanical failure. I flipped through the pages slowly, noticing details I had ignored before. Brake inspection delayed. Airbag malfunction listed as inconclusive. No follow-up requested by family. Daniel had been the one to sign. A knock sounded at the door, sharp and sudden. I nearly jumped out of my chair. This time, when I opened it, it was my nephew, Aaron. He stood there with his hands in his jacket pockets, concern etched into his face. You didn't answer your phone, he said. I got worried. I let him in, relief washing over me at the sight of a living, breathing person who wasn't tied to my nightmares. He noticed the papers spread across the table immediately. What's going on? He asked. I told him everything. The call, the voice, the footprints, the note. He didn't laugh. That scared me more than if he had. Uncle, he said slowly, this isn't a ghost story. What is it then? I asked. He hesitated. It's manipulation. Aaron hosted a small investigative podcast. He spent his life digging into cases that fell through the cracks, accidents that weren't accidents, disappearances that made too much sense. He leaned forward, tapping the report with his finger. People underestimate how powerful grief is, he said. If someone knows your routines, your memories, your emotional triggers, they can make you see almost anything. My stomach churned. You think someone is pretending to be Evelyn. I think someone wants you to believe she's still reaching out, he replied. Why? Aaron didn't answer right away. Then he said, because scared people are easy to control. That night, I locked every door and window. At exactly 1 a.m., the phone rang again. I answered this time. Dad, the voice said, strained, frightened. He's getting angry. You're not supposed to be talking to anyone. Who? I asked. The man who tells me what to remember. I closed my eyes. What's your name? I asked softly. There was a long pause. Then she whispered, I don't know anymore. Outside, something brushed against the window, not tapping. Listening. The next morning arrived without mercy. No soft transition, no gentle clarity. Just gray light leaking through the blinds and the dull ache of a body that hadn't truly rested in days. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at my hands, trying to convince myself they were steady. They weren't. They shook faintly, like something inside me was vibrating at a frequency I could no longer hear. The voice from the phone echoed in my head. The man who tells me what to remember. That sentence alone dismantled the last fragile wall between denial and truth. Someone wasn't haunting me. Someone was using me. I dressed slowly, deliberately, as if speed might invite mistakes. When grief evolves into fear, you learn caution the hard way. Aaron arrived before noon, limping slightly from an old knee injury he never stopped complaining about. He carried his laptop, a recorder, and the look of someone who had already started connecting dots I wasn't ready to see. I ran Evelyn's case again, he said without preamble, setting his things on the table. Not the police summary, the margins, the overlooked details. I poured him coffee. My hands shook enough that some splashed onto the counter. Tell me, I said. He opened a scanned document on the screen and rotated it toward me. Birth records, he said. From the clinic where your wife delivered. My chest tightened. That place shut down years ago, I murmured. They said there was a fire. Partial fire, Aaron corrected. Mostly storage damage. Convenient damage. He zoomed in on a scanned form. Mother, Margaret Hale. Father, Thomas Hale. Date, June 14. Then he scrolled. Same date. Same attending physician. But this time, the section marked. Number of infants looked wrong. There was a smudge. Anerasur. Something overwritten. It was changed, Aaron said. The ink density doesn't match the rest of the document. I swallowed hard. I'm saying your wife didn't give birth to one child. The room felt suddenly too small. I would have known, I whispered. Would you? Aaron asked gently. You weren't allowed in the delivery room back then. And that doctor, he was named in 3 separate complaints before he died. Unofficial adoptions, cash payments, babies moved without documentation. The voice on the phone came back to me. I don't know who I am anymore. What happened to the other baby? I asked. Aaron hesitated. That's where Daniel enters the picture. The knock at the door came right on cue. Daniel never rang the bell. He knocked firm, confident, like he belonged there. I felt my stomach drop. I'll handle this, Aaron said quietly. Just listen. I opened the door. Daniel stood there in his immaculate coat, hair perfectly combed, concern etched carefully onto his face like a practiced expression. You didn't answer my messages, he said. I was worried. I've been busy, I replied. His eyes flicked past me into the house. Who's here? He asked. My nephew. Daniel smiled politely at Aaron. Ah, the storyteller. Aaron returned the smile, but his eyes stayed cold. Daniel, Aaron said, did you ever notice how often people trust therapists without asking questions? Daniel's smile thinned. I'm not sure what you're implying. Good, Aaron replied. Then this won't be uncomfortable. He slid the laptop forward and played the audio. It was faint, distorted a recording from years ago, pulled from an old answering machine backup. A woman's voice, shaking. He says, I don't remember things correctly. Daniel's face drained of color. I looked at him, truly looked, and saw it for the first time. Not kindness. Control. You told her she was unstable, I said quietly. He straightened. She was grieving. You told her she imagined threats. She was emotional. You isolated her. That's not fair. Aaron stewed. You groomed her, he said flatly. Just like you groomed the other one. Daniel's jaw clenched. What other one? He asked. The phone rang. We all froze. 1 p.m. Not a M, I answered. Dad? The voice said clearer now, steadier. I found my birth certificate. Daniel lunged for the phone. Aaron blocked him. You don't get to decide who speaks anymore, Aaron said. The voice continued. My name isn't Evelyn, she said. It's Lydia. Danielle screamed. Not in anger, in fear. She doesn't know what she's saying, he shouted. She's confused. She's dangerous to herself. You're dangerous, I said. The door behind Daniel creaked open. A woman stood there. She looked like my daughter, but not exactly. The resemblance was undeniable. Bone structure, eyes, mouth, but the posture was different. Stronger. Older in a way pain creates. I'm real, she said. I always was. Daniel backed away. You can't be here, he whispered. I was born here, she replied. You just helped erase me. My legs gave out. I sat hard in the chair. Lydia, I said, the name tasting unfamiliar but right. Are you my... Yes, she said. I'm your daughter. Silence collapsed around us. You sold me, she said to Daniel. Then you found me, and you used me. He reached for his pocket. Aaron moved faster. The syringe hit the floor and rolled under the table. Sirens wailed in the distance. Lydia took my hand. "I'm done being quiet," she said. For the first time in years, I believed the night would end. Daniel didn't resist arrest. That surprised me most of all. When the police arrived, he stood exactly where he was, hands loose at his sides, eyes unfocused as if the world had finally slipped beyond a script he could no longer control. The syringe lay forgotten beneath the table. A small, ugly object that said everything words couldn't. Lydia never let go of my hand. I felt her fingers tremble, though her voice stayed steady as she answered questions. She had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her head. I realized not the telling, but the being believed. Daniel was taken away before sunset. No shouting, no final speech, just the sound of handcuffs closing and the soft click of a car door. When the house finally emptied, it felt larger than it had in years. Aaron packed up his equipment quietly. "I'll stay as long as you need," he said. I shook my head. "No, you've done enough." He hesitated, then nodded. "I'll be nearby." When the door closed behind him, it was just the two of us. Lydia stood by the mantel, staring at Evelyn's photograph. "She was beautiful," she said softly. "Yes," I replied. "She was." "I don't want to replace her," Lydia said quickly. "I don't want to be a shadow." I turned to her. "You're not," I said. "You're not a replacement. You're a miracle I didn't know I lost." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She had done enough of that in private, I suspected. Instead, she asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Why didn't you come looking for me?" The truth hurt. "Because I didn't know you existed," I said. "And because when Evelyn died, I stopped believing the world could take anything else from me." She nodded. Not forgiveness, understanding. That night, for the first time in 4 years, the phone did not ring at 1 a.m. I slept. The investigation unraveled quickly after that. Daniel's career collapsed under the weight of evidence. Altered records, coercive therapy practices, financial trails leading back to illegal adoption, brokers long buried by time and indifference. Evelyn's death was reopened. The accident wasn't an accident. A brake line tampered with, a mistake overlooked, a grieving husband who had guided the narrative just enough to avoid questions. I attended the hearing months later, sitting quietly in the back. When Daniel finally looked at me, there was no hatred in his eyes, only something worse. Irrelevance. Lydia moved slowly into my life. Not dramatically, not all at once. First, she came for coffee on Sundays. Then she stayed for dinner. Then one afternoon, I found her fixing the grandfather clock. "It just needed patience," she said. When it chimed again for the first time in years, I cried. She didn't mention it. We spoke about Evelyn often, not as a ghost, not as a wound, as a person who existed, who mattered, who connected us. One evening, Lydia asked if she could keep the gray jacket. "You should," I said. "It smells like home." A year passed. Grief didn't disappear. It transformed. It stopped screaming, started speaking. On the anniversary of Evelyn's death, Lydia and I sat on the porch together. The light was on. The night was quiet. "Do you ever miss the calls?" she asked gently. I thought about it. "No," I said. "But I understand why I answered." She nodded. "Loneliness sounds like hope when it knocks at the door," she said. At exactly 1 a.m., the grandfather clock chimed. Once. Nothing else followed. I smiled. If you're listening to this, and something feels familiar, if grief has ever spoken to you in a voice you trusted, remember this. Not everything that returns from the darkness is meant to guide you. Some things test whether you're willing to stay lost. But the truth, real truth, doesn't whisper at 1 a.m. It waits patiently for daylight. And when you finally open the door to it, you're never alone again. I'm really glad you're here, and that you took the time to listen and share this story with me. If it resonated with you, you can show your support by leaving a like. It truly helps more than you know. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know which city you're watching from and what time it is right now. I'm always amazed by how far these stories travel and where all of you wonderful people are listening from. If you'd like to support the channel a little extra, you can send a small donation. Thank you to everyone who does. It helps me keep sharing new real-life stories with you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories are appearing on your screen. Choose one, get comfortable, and I'll see you there.